The Lakewood Hills neighborhood, nestled between gentle rolling hills and a glimmering man-made lake, prided itself on harmony and neighborly cooperation. Each street featured neat lawns, pastel-painted shutters, and tidy mailboxes that aligned in perfect rows. One of the area's biggest attractions was the Lakewood Hills Community Pool, a spacious aquatic center managed by the local Homeowners Association, HOA. Every summer, families flocked to the pool for fun and relaxation. Parents lounged under umbrellas, toddlers splashed in the shallow end, and teens challenged each other at the diving boards. Even seniors enjoyed early morning laps before the midday rush. The pool had become a unifying place, bridging age gaps and forming cherished summer memories. Yet not everyone found the bustling energy comforting. A handful of local children, particularly those with sensory sensitivities or on the autism spectrum, struggled with the pool's bright lights, echoes, and rowdy crowds. A year earlier, after repeated pleas by parents, the HOA had introduced a special sensory hour, each day from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. During this quieter slot, lifeguards dimmed overhead lights, turned off loud water features, and asked swimmers to maintain relatively calm behavior. The kids who found chaos overwhelming could enjoy the water without meltdown or anxiety. For the families who benefited, this daily sensory hour was a godsend. Melissa Carter, mother to 8-year-old Olivia, saw her daughter blossom in that tranquil environment. Olivia, who had autism, initially resisted going to the pool at all, terrified by the unpredictable splashes and loud shouting. But thanks to the dedicated quiet time, she'd begun stepping into the shallow end, floating contentedly, sometimes even smiling when her mother guided her around gently. Other parents shared similar stories, children who found the pool manageable only in a calmer setting. For them, the single hour was a highlight of the day. Everyone else could still come before or after. The pool was open until evening, so it hardly felt like a major inconvenience. But not everyone agreed. Brenda Landry, a newly elected HOA board member, seemed irritated at the concept of catering to what she termed special privileges. She was in her mid-50s, with a crisp bob of chestnut brown hair, a preference for pressed linen outfits, and a relentless sense of authority. Many neighbors privately called her Karen for her bossy demeanor, constant demands to speak to a manager, and frequent scolding about minor HOA rules. Though Brenda usually fixated on lawn colors and mailbox styles, she'd recently shifted her attention to the daily sensory hour at the pool. In her mind, carving out exclusive quiet time disrupted her personal morning swims. She considered it unnecessary coddling. Over the next few weeks, her disdain would boil over into open conflict, threatening to break the peaceful summer tradition wide open. On a sunny Monday morning in June, the sun had barely climbed over the rooftops when Melissa Carter led Olivia to the community pool's entrance. It was nearly 9 a.m., the start of the quiet hour. A few other families arrived at the same time, greeting each other softly, mindful not to overwhelm the kids. The lifeguard on duty recognized them, nodding as he turned off the water jets in the shallow end and dimmed some overhead spotlights. The atmosphere felt serene. Olivia clung to Melissa's hand, eyes flickering in nervous anticipation. But once they passed through the gate and approached the calm water, Olivia's shoulders relaxed. She tentatively stepped onto the pool steps, letting the lukewarm water swirl around her ankles. Melissa smiled, relieved that her daughter was slowly growing comfortable with the environment. Nearby, another mother guided her son, who wore noise-canceling headphones. That tranquility was broken at 9:10 a.m. when Brenda Landry marched through the entrance. She wore a bright pink swimsuit under a half-open robe and carried a clipboard, her ever-present symbol of authority. The lifeguard frowned, not recalling Brenda's typical presence at this hour. Brenda surveyed the quiet setting with a look of disapproval. She noticed the turned-off water features, the lowered music volume, and the subdued hush among families. Her lips pressed tight. Stepping up to the lifeguard stand, she demanded, "Why aren't the fountains on? This place is as silent as a mausoleum." The HOA never approved changes to standard operations at all hours. The lifeguard tried to remain polite. "Ma'am, we have a daily quiet hour from 9 to 10 for children with sensory issues. It's been in place since last summer. The board did approve it." Brenda tapped her clipboard. "I'm on the board, and I didn't sign off on this." "Who specifically authorized it?" He cleared his throat. That was the previous board's decision, with broad community support. You can speak with the pool coordinator or the HOA president if you need details. Brenda's nostrils flared. She turned abruptly and approached the shallow end. A few parents tensed, exchanging wary looks. Brenda glowered at the environment, as if personally offended by the lack of chatter and splashing. She noticed Olivia hesitating at the steps, gripping her mother's hand. Melissa, sensing Brenda's hostility, forced a polite smile. "Good morning," she said softly, trying not to unnerve Olivia. Brenda barely acknowledged her. "Is this your doing?" "The quiet hour nonsense." Melissa's face fell. Many families requested it. It helps kids who get overwhelmed by noise. Brenda folded her arms. "Well, this is a public pool, not a private therapy session. If kids can't handle normal conditions, maybe they shouldn't come at all." Her voice was not loud, but the cutting tone made Melissa's stomach twist. Before Melissa could respond, Brenda waved a dismissive hand. "Anyway, I pay HOA fees. I have just as much right to use this pool how I please. I want the usual environment, with water jets on." She marched toward the control panel by the side of the pool, ignoring the lifeguard's protest. The parents watched in alarm as Brenda reached for the switch that activated the shallow-end fountains. The lifeguard scrambled down, stepping between Brenda and the panel. "Ma'am, please. We can't turn them on during the quiet hour." Brenda scowled. "Then I'll do it myself. You don't have authority to bar me from pool facilities." A tense standoff ensued. Other parents hovered, uncertain whether to intervene. Finally, the lifeguard radioed the pool manager, who arrived quickly, reaffirming that the quiet hour was an official policy. He politely asked Brenda to respect it for 50 more minutes. She glared, spouting lines about discrimination and inconvenience. But ultimately, she stepped back from the control panel. As a final show of protest, Brenda flung off her robe and hopped into the pool with a theatrical splash, loud enough to startle a few sensitive kids. She proceeded to swim laps, deliberately slapping the water with her arms. The parents huddled their children closer, trying to maintain a sense of calm. Though Brenda's disruptive presence cast a pall, the quiet hour continued. Olivia clung to her mother, trembling slightly, but eventually resumed waiting. By 10 a.m., Brenda had finished her laps and stomped out, fuming. She vowed to bring this matter before the HOA board, determined to end the pointless hush. Meanwhile, Melissa and the others consoled each other. They suspected a bigger confrontation loomed. The daily quiet hour had become essential for their children's well-being. They wouldn't relinquish it without a fight. That evening, Lakewood Hill's monthly HOA meeting convened in a modestly sized conference room at the neighborhood clubhouse. Around 15 residents attended, some with interest in landscaping updates or budget reports. Seated at a long table up front were the HOA board members. Carl Rosen, president, a friendly middle-aged man trying to balance competing interests. Sandra Thompson, the pragmatic treasurer who stuck to finances. Miriam Rhodes, a longtime resident known for her neighborly spirit. Gary Phelps, a retiree who rarely opposed anything that didn't cost money. Brenda Landry, Karen, newly elected, itching to assert control. When the agenda reached pool updates, Brenda seized the floor. She launched into a diatribe about how the daily quiet hour unfairly restricted normal pool usage. She claimed the rest of the community was being forced to accommodate a tiny minority at the cost of everyone else's enjoyment. She recounted that morning's incident, framing herself as a victim prevented from turning on pool features she had every right to use. Carl Rosen appeared perplexed. "But that quiet hour has existed since last year, and I believe it was well received. The pool is open for many hours each day. Losing that 1 hour hardly disrupts general usage." Brenda insisted, "I've fielded multiple complaints from residents who find it inconvenient to have the pool in near silence if they happen to come at 9 a.m. We pay dues. Shouldn't we get the full amenities?" Miriam Rhodes frowned. "I personally haven't heard any formal complaints except from you. Many families tell me the quiet hour is a blessing for their sensitive children. Are you sure you're speaking for the majority?" Brenda tapped her pen sharply on the table. "We're the HOA. We must serve the broader community, not just a small group. Anyway, if those kids can't handle normal pool noise, maybe they should swim in private sessions, or not at all." A subtle gasp rippled through the audience. Melissa Carter, who had come to observe, felt her cheeks burning. She wanted to respond. "Carl, Noticing, invited public comments. Melissa stood, voice trembling slightly, but resolved. My daughter Olivia has sensory processing challenges. This daily hour is the only reason she can use the pool. She's grown more confident in water. Many others with autism or anxiety benefit, too. Why is one quiet hour out of the entire day such a problem? The pool is open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's 11 hours total. We only ask for one of them to be calmer. A few neighbors nodded supportively. Even Gary Phelps, typically neutral, mumbled something like, 1 hour isn't too big an ask. Brenda glared, retorting, but you're forgetting that not everyone wants the pool hushed at 9 a.m. I myself prefer early morning swims with normal conditions. We shouldn't be forced to tiptoe around. This is a public space, not a therapy facility. Carl spread his hands. Look, we need to weigh all sides. Let's see if we can compromise. Maybe we keep the quiet hour but ensure the rest of the day remains unaffected. That's basically how it is now, though. Miriam added, could you simply arrive at 10 a.m. instead? Brenda, if the quiet hour bothers you? Brenda's face flushed. I shouldn't have to rearrange my schedule around a minority's special demands. The debate raged on for nearly half an hour, but in the end, the board took no official action to revoke the quiet hour. Carl concluded that they needed more data, more community feedback. Brenda stormed out, leaving tension in her wake. Melissa exhaled, relieved that the quiet hour survived for now. However, Brenda's fierce opposition worried her. If Karen was determined enough, she might resort to more dramatic tactics. The stage was set for a deeper conflict over compassion versus convenience in Lakewood Hills. Tuesday morning arrived with a cloudless sky, the heat promising a scorching afternoon. By 9 a.m., the familiar cluster of parents with sensory-sensitive kids gathered at the pool. The staff had prepared as usual, turning off the noisy water features. The families exchanged subdued greetings, grateful for the supportive environment. But at around 9:20 a.m., something unusual occurred. A loud whoop echoed across the pool deck, followed by the brash sound of water splashing heavily. Brenda had arrived once more, but this time accompanied by two friends. They wore bright swim caps, carried pool noodles, and immediately started a loud, playful display in the main pool area. Parents looked on nervously. Typically, all swimmers were requested to keep noise minimal during the quiet hour. But the staff rarely had to enforce that rule, as visitors usually respected it voluntarily. Today, however, Brenda and her companions seemed intent on ignoring the quiet request. They engaged in boisterous horseplay, thrashing water, even tossing a beach ball around and cackling loudly. A mother named Dana tried to soothe her son, who clapped his hands over his ears, tears forming. Another child retreated behind a lounge chair, overwhelmed by the sudden noise spikes. Melissa approached the lifeguard. This is specifically sabotage, right? Can you ask them to quiet down? The lifeguard, uncertain, walked over to Brenda's group. Ma'am, we're in the quiet hour for sensory-friendly swimming. Could you please keep your volume down? Brenda, floating on a pool noodle, sneered. I'm just swimming with friends, not violating any posted rule. I see no sign that says I must whisper or freeze. If there's an issue, maybe they should come later. Exchanging resigned looks, the lifeguard recognized that while the quiet hour was a recognized policy, it wasn't an official law. They could request courtesy, but Brenda refused to cooperate. A board member herself, she knew exactly how to push boundaries without overtly breaking rules. The result was a miserable session for the sensory families. Several kids, on the edge of meltdown, left early. By 9:40, only half the usual group remained, attempting to salvage the final 20 minutes. Brenda appeared smug as she sat at the pool's edge, chatting loudly. Melissa's heart sank, seeing Olivia's tension rise. Her daughter clung to the edge of the shallow end, shaking her head at each splash. Eventually, they too gave up. Back in the car, Olivia burst into tears. Melissa's heartbreak turned to anger. She realized Brenda was methodically destroying the one safe hour. If it continued, families wouldn't bother coming at all. That afternoon, Melissa posted a heartfelt message on the neighborhood forum. Please respect sensory hour. My daughter and others need a quieter environment. We've had disruptions from a small group ignoring the policy. If you value inclusivity, please speak up. Reactions came swiftly. Many sympathized. A few suggested scheduling an alternate hour. Some recommended complaining to the board. Brenda, lurking on the forum under her normal name, fired back. This quiet hour is not official law. Some of us prefer normal pool conditions. Stop forcing everyone to tiptoe. The argument spilled into multiple threads, fueling a heated debate. Meanwhile, families dreaded the next morning. They worried it might bring more sabotage. The seeds of deeper conflict had been sown. Unwilling to let Brenda's disruptions ruin the daily lifeline for their children, a group of determined parents decided to unify. They formed a small coalition called the Lakewood Sensory Parents Association, LSPA, though it was mostly an informal chat group at first. Over text messages and online calls, they strategized on how to preserve the quiet hour. At the next day's session, they arrived in greater numbers, inviting grandparents, older siblings, and supportive neighbors to stand in quiet solidarity. They hoped Brenda might be less inclined to cause a scene if confronted by a larger crowd. Sure enough, Brenda arrived at 9:15 a.m., accompanied by the same two friends. But this time, nearly 24 parents and children were scattered around the shallow end. They watched quietly, arms folded, as Brenda entered. The lifeguard politely reminded everyone about the quiet hour. Many of the watchers gently parted so that children with the highest sensitivities could remain calm, but they also formed a sort of ring around the pool, subtly discouraging rowdy play. Brenda smirked, pausing at the water's edge. Perhaps sensing the tension, she realized a big splashy entrance would provoke an immediate confrontation with multiple onlookers. Instead, she slid in more quietly, though still ignoring the hush. She chatted in an elevated voice to her friends, complaining about how ridiculous the hush was. A few kids flinched at her volume, but the collective presence of so many supportive neighbors helped maintain some semblance of calm. In an attempt at intimidation, Brenda circled the perimeter of the pool, occasionally splashing water with her hands. But each time, she encountered a protective gaze from a parent or ally. She huffed, eventually retreating to do mild laps in the deeper section, far from the vulnerable kids. By 9:50, she left in a huff, feeling her sabotage stifled. After she departed, the parents exchanged relieved smiles. They recognized that standing together deterred Karen's worst antics. But was this sustainable? They couldn't muster a large crowd every single morning. Parents had work schedules, other children to tend, or daily errands. At an impromptu meeting near the pool lounge chairs, Melissa proposed a new approach. We need an official petition or policy that clarifies quiet hour as mandatory, not just recommended. That way, staff can enforce it. No loud disruptions allowed. Another mother, Stephanie, nodded. Yes, the board must adopt a formal rule. Otherwise, Brenda will keep pushing boundaries. They agreed to draft a petition, gather signatures from across Lakewood Hills, and present it to the HOA, urging them to codify the sensory hour as an enforceable rule. If enough residents supported it, the board would have to act. That evening, a flurry of messages circulated. The LSBA wrote a concise statement. We, the undersigned residents of Lakewood Hills, request that the HOA establish a formal, enforceable policy for the 9 to 10 a.m. daily sensory hour at the community pool, ensuring a quieter environment for children with sensory sensitivities or autism. Disruptions during this hour should be disallowed, with staff authorized to enforce these guidelines. Respect for diverse needs is vital to our community. Volunteers posted copies at the library, the clubhouse, and online. The next day, parents canvassed the neighborhood, explaining the situation. Many neighbors, even those without special needs children, felt empathy and signed. After all, it was only 1 hour. Why not show compassion? However, some residents felt uncertain, not wanting more rules. Brenda herself posted scathing comments, claiming the LSBA was trying to enforce silence on everyone. She warned that once the HOA started banning normal pool noise, more restrictions could follow. A small fraction of neighbors shared that fear, but the majority saw the quiet hour as benign. Within a week, the petition garnered over 200 signatures, a strong showing for their community. Buoyed by that support, Melissa and her group prepared to confront the HOA board at the next meeting. They believed they had momentum on their side. And ironically, Brenda's sabotage had galvanized even more empathy for the families needing calm. As the LSBA gathered signatures for a mandatory quiet hour, a few parents started encountering another concern. There were more families whose kids could benefit from a quieter environment, but 9 to 10 a.m. wasn't always feasible for them. Some had kids who needed therapy in the mornings or had meltdown patterns at different times. A father named Noah, who had a 10-year-old son with sensory processing challenges, explained that they usually arrived at 4 p.m., but the pool was crowded and loud then. Melissa realized that the single designated hour might inadvertently exclude others who also needed calm swimming time but had different schedules. That sparked an idea. What if, instead of just protecting the 9 to 10 a.m. slot, we also asked the HOA to add a second or third quiet slot at different times? Maybe an evening hour a few days a week. The concept excited many parents. They recognized that while Brenda was trying to sabotage even the single hour, they could aim higher. If the board authorized multiple quiet segments, families could pick whichever fit their routine. It would also spread the coddling complaint, as Brenda called it, across more days, giving a broader range of children a chance to swim comfortably. In the next LSBA online meeting, they revised their petition, not just calling for the formalization of the existing hour, but also requesting additional quiet slots, at least twice a week. The new language read, "We propose the HOA create multiple sensory-friendly time slots at the pool, maintaining 9 to 10 a.m. daily, plus at least 2 additional hours on different days, either mid-afternoon or early evening, so families can access a calmer environment. This fosters inclusivity for all." When word of the revised petition spread, some neighbors worried it might be too ambitious. They asked if that would create more conflict with Brenda, but the LSBA felt emboldened. Brenda's hostility had already shown them they needed robust policies. Why not push for even more? Ironically, Brenda's attempts to crush the single hour had awakened a broader push for multiple quiet times. She'd sown the seeds of greater empathy. Some residents who disliked conflict found themselves admiring the calm, child-friendly approach of the LSBA. The petition soared to over 300 signatures. Finally, the day of the critical HOA meeting arrived. Melissa, along with a group of about 20 supporters, prepared to present the expanded petition. They braced for Brenda's inevitable rage. The outcome could determine whether Lakewood Hills became more inclusive or let sabotage triumph. That evening, the HOA meeting was packed. Folding chairs lined the walls of the clubhouse conference room. Tension buzzed in the air. Carl Rosen, the HOA president, called the meeting to order, quickly running through minor agenda items before reaching the hot topic, pool sensory hour policy. Melissa rose, petition in hand. She introduced herself and the LSBA's mission. "We're here to request a formal, enforceable quiet hour from 9 to 10 a.m. daily, plus at least 2 additional quieter slots each week." We have over 300 signatures from Lakewood Hills residents who believe in supporting families with sensory needs. She passed copies to the board, her voice trembling slightly, but carrying resolve. Brenda instantly objected. "This is getting out of hand. They want multiple hours? Are we turning our pool into a silent retreat? Most families enjoy normal pool noise. This is beyond reason." Before she could continue, Carl lifted his palm. "Brenda, let's hear them out. Ms. Carter, please elaborate on why multiple slots are necessary." Melissa explained how many families couldn't make the 9 to 10 a.m. window, thus missing the calm environment. She cited examples of children who thrived in a quieter setting but required midday or evening sessions. "We're only asking for a fraction of the total weekly hours. The pool is open nearly 70 hours a week in summer. An additional 2 or 3 quiet hours won't hamper general usage much." Miriam Rhodes flipped through the petition signatures, impressed by the volume. "These are all from local households? That's quite a lot of support." "Yes," Melissa said. "Plus the petition is still growing. People empathize with children who struggle in noisy conditions. We want to ensure they can enjoy the pool, too." Brenda retorted, "This is a slippery slope. Next, they'll ban water splashing at random times. Pools are supposed to be fun, not hush-hush zones. And what if non-sensory families wander in during that time, not knowing? They'll be scolded for normal play." A father named Noah raised his hand. "As a parent of a child with autism, I assure you we don't scold typical families if they show up. We politely request quiet during that hour. The lifeguards remind them, and usually they comply. It's about respect. We're not forcing the entire day to be silent." Gary Phelps, the retiree board member, piped up. "Given how many have signed, it's clear there's strong demand. I see no harm in trying an expanded schedule. The cost to the HOA is minimal. Just instruct lifeguards to turn off water features and keep volume down. Carl Rosen looked around the room, sensing the majority's sympathy. But he also recognized Brenda's vehement opposition. He proposed a compromise. Perhaps we test an expanded schedule for the rest of summer. Let's say we keep the daily 9 to 10 a.m. quiet hour, plus add an evening slot on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 7 p.m. We track feedback and adjust if needed. The crowd murmured approval. Brenda muttered objections about major inconvenience, but she was outnumbered. The board voted, with 4 in favor and 1 against Brenda. The motion passed. Lakewood Hills would double the quiet hours for families needing a calmer pool environment. Applause and relieved laughter spread among the supporters. Some parents hugged each other, tears in their eyes, grateful that all children, those who thrived in calm settings, would gain more opportunities to swim comfortably. Brenda's face was a mask of fury. This had not only cemented the 9 to 10 a.m. hour as official policy, but expanded it. Her sabotage had backfired spectacularly. She left the meeting in a huff, ignoring the jubilant group. But the parents knew better than to think she'd simply give up. If anything, her resentment might escalate. 2 days later, on a Thursday evening, the new quiet slot from 6 to 7 p.m. commenced. Families who couldn't attend mornings arrived eagerly, some with older kids wearing noise-dampening headphones or tinted goggles to reduce bright reflections. Lifeguards turned off the splash features, asked swimmers to keep volume moderate. The sense of relief was palpable. Brenda, fuming at the board's decision, decided to double down. If her brazen sabotage at 9 a.m. had garnered pushback, maybe she could exploit the busier evening hours' confusion. She planned to bring a large group of her acquaintances, encouraging them to be rowdy and effectively override the quiet. At 6:10 p.m., Brenda's group stormed in. 8 or 9 people, including a few rowdy teens. Immediately, they cranked up a portable Bluetooth speaker, blasting pop music near the pool's edge. The lifeguard approached, reminding them of the quiet policy from 6 to 7 p.m. They pretended not to hear. One teen hopped into the water, yelling, "Cannonball," causing a huge splash that doused a nearby child who shrieked in terror. Outraged parents rushed to comfort their kids. The lifeguard repeated the request to lower the volume, but Brenda's group ignored it. They insisted they had the right to enjoy music, that no official sign forbade it. A mother named Cynthia, whose 6-year-old was on the autism spectrum, confronted Brenda. "We have an HOA-approved quiet hour now, from 6 to 7. Please turn the music off. My daughter can't handle it." Brenda smirked. "What if my group also has needs? We need music to enjoy ourselves. The board can't force us into silence." Cynthia's child clutched her ears, trembling. Furious, Cynthia marched to the front desk to call an HOA representative. Meanwhile, the lifeguard radioed the head pool manager, who arrived swiftly, citing the newly codified rule. "Ma'am, we have an official schedule. Music devices or loud splashing are not allowed during this hour. If you refuse to comply, we can revoke pool privileges." Brenda argued, claiming they had no right to enforce unreasonable hush, but the manager stood firm. The group's defiance risked official repercussions. Sensing potential for a humiliating confrontation, a few of Brenda's friends grew uneasy. They whispered that maybe they should quiet down to avoid losing membership entirely. Disappointed that her allies lacked conviction, Brenda felt cornered. Reluctantly, the group shut off the speaker. Some left the pool area altogether, unwilling to face further scolding. A hush fell over the water. Parents exhaled relief. Kids relaxed, able to float or wade calmly. Brenda, left with only 2 supporters, glared at the lifeguard. She realized if she escalated further, the HOA might impose real sanctions, suspending her pool access or even fining her. She'd lost. With a final contemptuous snort, Brenda gathered her towel and stomped out, leaving the quiet hour intact. The families rejoiced, though they also recognized how precarious their victory was. They hoped this would mark the end of Brenda's sabotage attempts. Over the following weeks, the newly established quiet slots drew more families than ever. The daily morning hour remained a mainstay, while the Tuesday through Thursday evening hours proved a boon for working parents. The LSBA's membership grew. Some local therapy clinics recommended Lakewood Hills Pool as a prime resource for children needing gradual exposure to water in a low-sensory environment. The lifeguards adjusted seamlessly, toggling features on or off based on the schedule. Signs were posted at the entrance. Quiet hour, 9 to 10 a.m. daily, and 6 to 7 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday. Please keep voices low, no music, no water features. A handful of passers-by initially expressed surprise, but once the reason was explained, helping children with sensory sensitivities, they usually obliged. The general attitude around Lakewood Hills was that an inclusive community was a stronger one. As for Brenda, she huffed about the ridiculous schedule, but her attempts to muster a counter-protest fizzled. She posted rants on the neighborhood forum, warning that more coddling might follow. Most neighbors ignored or refuted her, pointing out that people had many other hours to enjoy a normal pool environment. The few who disliked more quiet hours recognized that the expanded schedule was already official. Fighting it seemed futile. In a quiet moment, Carl Rosen, the HOA president, privately thanked the LSBA for working within the system, gathering signatures, presenting a reasoned argument, and staying respectful. He believed Brenda's approach of sabotage and rudeness had backfired, revealing her as callous. Meanwhile, the LSBA had shown genuine compassion for neighbors with special needs. Parents who once dreaded the pool's chaos now found a sense of belonging. Children who used to melt down at the slightest splash discovered calmer waters in which to explore, bond with parents, and practice safe swimming. Hearing children joined, too, learning the value of empathy as they saw how small changes in volume helped others feel comfortable. All the while, the memory of Brenda's sabotage attempts lingered, especially that bizarre day she and her friends blasted music. But it only served as a cautionary tale. Negativity can unify the rest of the neighborhood in defiance, forging an even more inclusive environment. Ironically, the success of multiple quiet slots introduced an unforeseen challenge. Over time, more families with special needs from outside Lakewood Hills heard about the pool's policy. Some tried to access it as guests. Officially, the pool was for Lakewood Hills residents and their invited guests only, but many local families had friends living in the neighborhood. Word spread quickly, and on certain evenings, the quiet hour began attracting a bigger crowd than the regular times. This was a testament to how desperately families sought calmer public pool options, but it created logistical strains. The parking lot sometimes filled up, lounge chairs ran short, and a few Lakewood Hills residents grumbled about outsiders swamping the pool. Even some LSBA members felt conflicted. While they empathized with the visiting families, they worried the pool might exceed capacity or strain resources. At the next board meeting, the question arose: should we restrict the quiet hours to residents only? Or do we embrace these newcomers? Miriam Rhodes expressed concern that the pool might be turning away paying members if too many guests arrived at once. But Carl Rosen, mindful of the bigger picture, suggested a gentler approach. We can keep the normal guest policy. Residents can invite up to 2 guests. Let's just ensure no single family invites a massive group daily. If it becomes unmanageable, we can look into a sign-up system. Brenda seized upon the chance to sow division. See? This is what happens when you cater to special interests. Now we have overcapacity. Our pool is becoming a magnet for every special needs family in the region. Next, they'll want full takeover. Her words rankled the board. Sandra Thompson, the treasurer, retorted, "We have capacity rules. The lifeguards enforce them. As of now, we're well within safe limits most days. Let's not exaggerate." Ultimately, the board decided to maintain the open approach, but keep an eye on crowd sizes. They'd trust the lifeguards to monitor capacity and ask large groups to come at different times if the pool got overcrowded. The LSBA offered to create an informal schedule, encouraging families with flexible times to avoid peak crowds. Through these small adjustments, the pool continued to run smoothly. Meanwhile, Brenda's doomsday predictions never materialized. On a few evenings, the quiet hour got busy, but generally, it was still calmer than normal hours. Kids with headphones or autism found acceptance, forging friendships with each other. One balmy afternoon, Brenda entered the pool area outside of quiet hours, hoping for a regular swim. She had avoided the pool for a bit, frustrated by the new rules. But she missed her morning laps. As she settled on a lounge chair, she noticed a small child who seemed anxious. The child was whimpering at the sight of so many people splashing. She recognized the mother as one of the LSBA parents, gently explaining to the child that it wasn't quiet hour, but soon they'd leave if he got too overwhelmed. The child tried to be brave, stepping into the water. Within minutes, though, a loud shriek from a group of teen swimmers caused him to cover his ears and retreat, trembling. The mother gave him a comforting hug, then guided him out, apologizing to the boy for the unexpected noise. Brenda watched the mother's gentle reassurance, the child's wide, fearful eyes. A pang of guilt twisted in her gut. She recalled how outraged she'd been that these children had special accommodations. Yet seeing the boy's genuine distress at the normal sounds, she realized it wasn't a matter of preference. He truly couldn't cope with the commotion. Brenda might never fully understand the meltdown triggers, but she could see the heartbreak in that mother's face, wanting her child to experience a simple pool day but forced to leave early. As they departed, Brenda found herself uncharacteristically quiet. Maybe this sensory hour wasn't so frivolous after all. She still disliked giving up her morning routine, but an ember of empathy flickered. She recalled her own nephew, who struggled with ADHD, though not severely enough to need quiet hours. Perhaps if he needed a certain environment, Brenda would want him to have it. She brushed off the thought, attributing it to a fleeting moment of softness. Still, it lingered in her mind, a seed of doubt about her combative stance. By midsummer, Lakewood Hills had settled into a new normal. The daily morning quiet hour and the twice-weekly evening quiet hours had become a fixture. The large sign at the gate spelled out the schedule clearly. Lifeguards and staff enforced it with minimal drama. A few visitors occasionally stumbled in, unaware, but quickly adapted or opted to return later. Meanwhile, the LSBA flourished as an informal social network, with parents exchanging tips on therapies, dietary approaches, or educational resources. They sometimes organized joint outings beyond the pool, like a relaxed park picnic or a sensory-friendly movie screening. The sense of community blossomed, forging deeper friendships among families who once felt isolated. Throughout this transformation, Brenda largely retreated from direct sabotage. She recognized that any further disruptions could see her membership revoked by the board, which had grown tired of her antics. She continued to grumble, posting occasional rants about too many special accommodations, but her audience waned. Most neighbors appreciated the inclusive environment. In a surprising development, one of Brenda's acquaintances, a woman named Candace, confided that her nephew had recently been diagnosed with autism. Candace gently scolded Brenda for her hostility. You might not realize how vital a quiet hour can be for these kids. They're not just shy, they can physically suffer from sensory overload. Brenda bristled at first, but Candace's personal story softened her further. She learned how her acquaintance's nephew cried for hours after being taken to a normal public pool. Over time, this new perspective chipped away at Brenda's resentment. She started acknowledging that quiet hours might indeed serve a real need, not just a coddling fad, as she once believed. Late one afternoon, Brenda decided to quietly observe the last minutes of the 6 to 7 p.m. quiet hour. She slipped into the pool area around 6:50, noticing a group of families calmly floating or waiting. Laughter was gentle, the environment peaceful. A boy with large headphones giggled in delight when a friendly neighbor passed him a soft foam ball. Brenda took a seat on a bench, feeling oddly out of place but also curious. She watched the boy, maybe around 9 or 10, softly toss the ball back. Each time, he squealed with excitement, not from fear but from joy in a quiet, supportive space. At 7 p.m., the water features turned on, the lifeguards resumed normal volume, and families prepared to leave. The boy's mother noticed Brenda, recognized her from prior conflicts, and approached with a tentative smile. We're done. Sorry if we intruded on your time, she offered politely, rummaging in her bag for towels. Brenda shook her head, swallowing an unexpected lump in her throat. You're fine, she said quietly. She paused, then forced the words out. Does your son only come during quiet hour? The mother nodded. Yes, he can't handle the noise otherwise. It's made a huge difference for him. He used to fear the pool altogether. Brenda lowered her gaze. I see. She hesitated, feeling a swirl of embarrassment and empathy. Well, I hope it's helping him. The mother offered a small, genuine smile. It is. Thank you. Then she guided her son toward the changing rooms. Brenda lingered, absorbing the hush that had ended. She realized that in those last minutes of the quiet hour, no one had been negatively impacted. The child found joy, the mother found relief, and the rest of the community still had the entire evening to be loud. Was that so wrong? She gazed at the swirling water jets, ironically missing the calm that had reigned moments before. With a heavy sigh, she rose and left. Something had changed inside her, an inkling of understanding. She wouldn't become a champion of quiet hour overnight, but the raw hatred or resentment had softened. She started thinking that maybe there was room for everyone's needs, hers included, if she let go of stubborn pride. August arrived, the final stretch of summer. Lakewood Hills bustled with end-of-season barbecues, kids prepping for back-to-school, and seniors enjoying the last weeks of warm weather. The community pool thrived with a well-coordinated schedule, daily quiet hour at 9 to 10 a.m., 2 evening quiet slots weekly, and plenty of normal hours for typical play. Complaints dwindled. One Sunday, the HOA hosted a summer finale pool party from noon to 4 p.m., outside any quiet hours. Families gathered for music, potluck dishes, and pool games. The LSBA set up a small booth raising awareness about autism and sensory issues, distributing colorful pamphlets explaining how small accommodations made big differences. Surprisingly, Brenda dropped by the party. She kept her distance at first, but eventually wandered near the LSBA booth. Melissa Carter, who recognized Brenda's face, greeted her hesitantly. Brenda studied the display of pictures showing kids happily swimming during quiet hour. She saw a sign that said, "Thank you, Lakewood Hills, for making a difference." In a move that no one expected, Brenda said softly, "I've given you folks a hard time. I guess. I didn't understand how crucial this was for some children." She paused, awkward. "I still think we shouldn't lose normal hours, but maybe a few quiet hours a week is a fair compromise." Melissa's eyes widened. She realized Brenda was offering a near apology in her own roundabout way. Gently, Melissa replied, "We appreciate you saying that. We never wanted to push out anyone else, just find a balance. Thank you for acknowledging it." Brenda nodded stiffly, then excused herself, heading to chat with other neighbors. Though no official apology passed her lips, the conversation signaled a shift. She no longer waged war on quiet hour or tried to sabotage it. Over time, her negative posts and rants faded. At 3 p.m., the pool party ended with a burst of laughter as kids lined up for a final slip down a water slide. The LSBA families, unafraid of normal volume at that time, joined the festivities, mingling easily. A sense of unity pervaded Lakewood Hills, one that overcame previous hostilities. By summer's close, it was clear that the new schedule, double the quiet hours, was here to stay. The policy would likely continue next year, too. The HOA recognized it as an inclusive asset that showcased the neighborhood's compassion. Families with special needs children no longer felt like second-class citizens. In the grand scope, Brenda's sabotage had ironically led to an expansion of the quiet hour from one slot to multiple. Her hostility highlighted the cruelty of opposing a small accommodation that cost almost nothing yet meant everything to those who needed it. The community, seeing her attempts, had rallied around the children. Thus, the pool's final day for the season arrived in early September. In the morning quiet hour, Olivia swam confidently, no longer clinging fearfully. She floated, blowing soft bubbles in the water. Melissa, beaming, realized how far they'd come. As the hour ended, the gentle hush shifted to normal pool energy, but she and Olivia lingered, unafraid, feeling welcomed in their own neighborhood. And so, Lakewood Hills ended the summer stronger, more empathetic. The Karen, who tried to sabotage a single quiet hour, wound up spurring an even greater commitment to sensory-friendly time, doubling it. In that difference lay the power of community. Empathy triumphed, families found peace, and a better future for every child beckoned from the shimmering water.